Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another dialogue here at Literature Across Borders, a transnational literary exchange program that's dedicated to books for young people. Although, as W.H. Auden said very many years back, that there's no such thing as a good book that's only for children. My name is Meghaa Gupta, and I work in children's publishing here in India, and I'm a co-founder of Literature Across Borders with the very lovely Dr. Alexia Casale, who is a reader in writing for young people at Bath Spa University and a writer of many lovely books for children and for adults. So today's dialogue is on bookselling across borders. Bookstores are perhaps the most significant leg and litmus test in the journey that a book makes from its creators to its readers. Uh, in a world with many distractions and with many e-commerce giants, how do bookstores continue to influence the fate of books in different markets? And what happens when books have to cross borders to reach bookstores? In today's dialogue, we will weigh in on these and many other vital questions on the business of selling books with our three lovely booksellers from the UK and from the Czech Republic and from India. A quick introduction to all three speakers who are with us today. Tereza Pařízková is an author of multiple children's books. She's in charge of book selection and the program of events at Zlata Velryba. Am I getting that right?
Wonderful.
Thank you. At in the Czech Republic. Next, we have Edouard Gallais, who is a Franco-British bookseller and events manager from Waterstones Bristol. And finally, we have Vidya Mani, who is an author, an editor, and one of the foremost curators of Indian children's books. She's the founder of Funky Rainbow, an independent bookstore in Bengaluru and Mysore here in India. If you have questions for our booksellers, we will be leaving a little bit of room for audience questions at the end of this discussion, but feel free to pop in your questions into the chat box in the course of the conversation, and Lexi will be taking them, in the course of the conversation when there's an opportunity. But of course, you can also come up on camera and ask your questions at the end of the conversation. With that, Lexi, I will have you take forward this conversation. Can't wait to dive in and listen to what everyone has to say on bookselling across borders.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who's joining us today, and hi to everybody who's watching this after the fact. We really hope you enjoy this event, and do look on the Literature Across Borders website to see all of the other events that we are hosting and celebrating about books and conversations about them traveling across borders. So without further ado, I'm going to kick us off, if I can, by asking if a lovely panelist could talk briefly about the children's book market in their different countries. Is it dominated by your own country's literature, or is it dominated more by foreign books? And what do you think about the mix of that? I will start with Vidya, because that's who's on my screen in that corner.
Thank you so much, Lexi, and hello to everybody. I said good evening, but I know we're in different time zones. So hello to everyone who's joined in. Thank you so much for taking time out to be with us, to listen to some independent booksellers talking about books crossing borders. So like Meghaa said, I'm one of the co-founders of Funky Rainbow. We're an independent children's bookstore, and we have two little stores, one in Bangalore, in the city of Bangalore, which many of you may have heard of, and in a smaller town not very far away from Bangalore called Mysore. In fact, I'm doing this conversation from Funky Rainbow, Bangalore. The stores right behind me. We're shut for the day because it's 7:30 in the evening here now. And so when we started out 13 years ago, in fact, we're celebrating our 13th birthday on the 19th of this month. We started out saying that our focus was going to be only on Indian children's books. I mean, the reason I state this only Indian children's books is because the Indian market is flooded with international books. I mean, the books that I grew up reading as a child, and not that I regret reading even a single one of them really, mostly came from the UK and from the US. So our markets are our entire book market. Writing for children in English, which sort of began in India, let's say in the 1970s, happened, only after a lot of books had already come in from the West into India. So for us to find a demarcating factor to sort of say that there's something that distinguishes us. I mean, we said we were a children's bookstore, of course, but we also said we focus almost exclusively on Indian children's books. So yes, our market is, largely dominated even today, with books that come in from the West, but we have a vibrant publishing scene in India. At least in the last 2 decades, there's been a lot of books that have been coming out for children across different age groups, and in different categories. And we really think those books need to be showcased, not just to, children up here in India, I mean, to children up in India, of course, definitely, but also I think we're ready for our books to cross borders. Books should cross borders. I mean, there's just that one statement that I think, we all grew up, and I'm sure a lot of you will agree that, we did grow up reading a lot of books that crossed borders and came to us. So, while our market is dominated considerably by books from the West, we have branded ourselves as the store that exclusively promotes Indian children's books.
Thank you so much. Shall we go to Edouard? What do you think of this? What is the balance, and what do you think about this of international books versus books from this country? And actually, you've sold books in very different countries, so maybe you could reflect a bit on how that's changed in the UK versus elsewhere for you.
That's right. Sorry about the technical issues earlier. So I think working in a quite large general bookshop, which has quite a dedicated large kids section, it does give me the opportunity to see how we would sort of range it by age in the first place. And that's how I sort of see what goes in terms of stock ordering. So first you've got from sort of birth to picture book age, which would be about 6, 7 years old. Most of this is going to be what we call the famous characters and the sort of books for toddlers. They are very British characters, I think. You've got the classic Peter Rabbit, Winnie the Pooh, the Very Hungry Caterpillar. So all of those are very British classics, which then I have also known as a child myself and as a kids bookseller when I was bookselling in France. So there's definitely cross borders at the time, but they've been established for many years now. And then when you move on to the sort of slightly older and up to 9 to 12 years old, very much into fiction, we very much seem to be championing British publishers and British authors as well. Some translations, but it's far and wide very British, I would say. Lots of them are what we call middle grade, so very much that sort of age range, 9 to 12, to sort of keep the interest in reading. There's definitely a boom in this market. I think the section in my 10 plus years in the bookshop has gone from maybe 4 bays to about triple the size now. It becomes a bit more interesting in terms of export and import when you get to teenage books, because a lot of them seem to be not translated, but coming over from America. And they tend to be the bestsellers that are particularly popular on social media with young people as well, which is, I'm sure, something we'll be talking about later on. But they become the books that the teenagers request more than the books we have to recommend or to particularly champion. That said, we do have a few I do know a few French translators, for example, who do contribute to picture books that are written by British authors, but it's a sort of joint collaboration. You've got the everlasting classic Julia Donaldson that goes with Alex Schaffer, so, you know, crossing borders again for decades at least. And we do start to see a few more foreign authors being translated. And I don't think there's a particular point or country of origin in this one. It's just whatever the publishers decide to pick and to really champion. And then that sort of makes its way into the bookshops. So that's for the British bookshop side. The French bookshop, I haven't worked in for the last 12 years. So that does go back a bit. And I'm sure many things have changed. But we did have the very strong cultural exception of French bookshops and French publishing absolutely championing their authors and illustrators. It's a very legally protected industry in France, thanks to the equivalent of the netbook agreement. So it's easier to be successful as a bookseller, as an independent bookseller, and to be a well-established publisher and to sort of thrive as an author. We do also have a lot more meetings and one-to-ones with publishers, editors, representatives to really feel the passion for a title. So that really helps. And because it still remains sort of a niche, small group, big village industry, you do often get to meet some authors at fairs and festivals. So it's always nice to have that connection. And then you really can champion the book if you feel like it's speaking to your readers.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. Tereza, do you want to pick up the conversation on that point for us? Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm coming from some numbers as well, because there is this continuous trend, I would say, in the Czech Republic of like what kind of books are published in the field of children's literature. And we say that it's like 60% of books are coming from across the country and are translated into Czech, and 40% of the books are made and written and drawn and everything done here in the Czech Republic. So it's like 60-40, and we call it like import character still. So I mean, this is the balance of the books that you can see in the Czech market, in the Czech bookshops. But as for my bookshop, because it's independent one, it's not the biggest one. So what I do is like I curate the books that we offer, and I am not sure whether this 60-40 would be the theme here, because I didn't count it in my bookshop, but it might be like this because we've got many books in translation.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for starting us off with such a lovely piece of context. We've already touched on my next question, but maybe we could expand a bit. So I'd love to go around, perhaps we can go in reverse order, and then I don't have to keep interrupting in between people, and just explore some of the themes, the genre that have done well in the children's and YA book market in your country, both those from within and those from without. And is it different what does well that is written in country versus imported? Teresa, should we start with you and then come to Edouard and then come to Vidya?
Yeah, of course. With this question, I'm always thinking of picture books, because this topic in children's literature is very close to me. And the fact is that in the Czech Republic, like typical picture books were not so common like a decade or 2 decades ago. And I know that comparing to other countries, it's a different story. But from what I hear, like 5, 6, 7 years ago still, is my customers stating that it feels like a lot of money for a little bit of text to them. But it's changing now, and I'm very happy for this, because it's like continuous conversation about what picture books can really do and how magical they are. So I'm very proud that we have more and more picture books in the Czech Republic. We have more and more like Czech picture books, but as well we are getting more attracted, if I can say it or put it this way, the publishers are, by the picture books from abroad that are very important, and I'm very glad that we can offer them on Czech market too.
So picture book, I'm just picturing my section to try and see how we can talk about it and lay it out. They are definitely they in British Bookshop, they come under the sort of starting prices of the kids market. They tend to be maybe a couple of pounds less expensive than a young adult novel. So they seem like a probably worthy investment, especially because the kids are still at that age where they really go for the books, start to pick them up and to browse and to sort of splash on the floor, and usually come to one of us in the bookshop when we're around to ask for a story time. So they get quite excited about it. And we do get, I don't have the exact figure, but I would say probably 3 new picture books every week on average. But it does fluctuate quite a lot, and we do get a new roster of picture books very often, which is great. We see a lot of authors, a lot of illustrators, a lot of series continuing as well, which is always really nice when the child really loves one book and they discover that there's a sequel to it. I think it's always been there as long as I remember. And as a French bookseller, we also had a very wide array of picture books. A lot of them were different formats, and I think they were playing a lot more with making a book the shape of a castle or the shape of a snake, which was really interesting to wrap up for Christmas. But they definitely also had a lot of very little text, obviously, although they tried to make it educational. And the more we've gone on, I've bought a couple of them in France 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they get a lot more clever and wittier, I think. And they're not afraid of going really for humor, whereas before it was a bit more of sort of traditional story with some humor, but right now it's really getting into a lot more laughing out loud results and expectations for the child. So that makes it really nice and interactive and accessible.
Yeah, for us, we've had a history of books coming out in English. I mean, so lots of people writing for children across age groups. Starting from the 70s, and then the big publishing houses like Penguin Random House and HarperCollins and Hachette. All of them making their way into India and flooding the market with Enid Blytons and Asterix and Tintin, and we read a lot of these books growing up, right? If you asked me, if you dropped me in London, I would find my way around London far more easily if you dropped me than if you dropped me somewhere remotely in India, because we played Monopoly, we read English books, we were just so steeped in books that came from Britain and from the US. So when we started out in the early 70s to write in English, the late 70s, when we sort of started to write in English, we did picture books, but there were a lot of morals worked into our picture books. And I'm not sure kids or adults of any age really wanted morals at all, right? I mean, you took away from a book what you wanted to take away from it. You didn't need somebody to tell you honesty is the best policy or whatever it is, really, right? So when the independent publishers started to do work, and as a little independent children's bookstore, we have a lot of books that come to us from the independent publishers. If I compared the ratio of independent publishers vis-a-vis mainstream publishers at Funky Rainbow, the independent publishers would outweigh what I have from the mainstream publishers. I don't mean in terms of numbers really, but in terms of what we curate and put into the store, because the mainstream publishers, have difficult terms. Their books are all up on online websites that are willing to give them to you at some unprecedented kind of discounts, and so we find that what the independent publishers do, the books that they've been bringing out in the last decade or two have just absolutely been lovely. And one of those categories that does remarkably well for us at the store are picture books, like both Tereza and Edouard said, the number of picture books that have grown in the last 13 years. I mean, we have a tiny store, so we're always jostling for space, to decide to put what we're going to put in. Our picture book shelves have overtaken several other shelves, and I'm delighted too, because there's nothing quite like a group of little children and the adults in their lives sort of lying on the floor or sitting on a beanbag and like, looking and reading books. And, these books just grow with you, so definitely the picture book category is something that I have seen a lot of, coming out in the last 10, 15 years, and lovely, wonderful books that have been, that have been in existence now for 20 years. I mean, they came out 20 years ago, and there's a picture book that's still in print, that children seem to love and read and enjoy at the moment. I think the chapter books too, they were not a well-defined category till about a decade ago in India. And, especially these chapter books that make the transition, help readers make the transition from picture book reading to slightly more words, a little bit more nuanced plots, a little bit more in for the reader. That category has done extremely well in the store, in the last decade. I mean, there are a couple of series of books that some publishers have launched that when they come out now, parents call you and are asking you, they come to the store, is there a new one in that series? That's been the response to chapter books. So this is our experience at the stores. Our YA category is very new. We started to bring out YA books, I'm assuming, just 10, 15 years ago, perhaps. And with a lot of them, a lot more of them coming out in recent times. But it's the smallest category, of books in the store. There's a lot of, there is some demand for it, because by the time children, they're 13 or 14 or 15, I think, they're navigating a complex world. Children are navigating a complicated world. And I mean, the answers to, how one makes their way through this world is best reflected from young adult books. And we would be really happy to see a lot more, young adult books. This is without bringing in anything that comes in from the West. I mean, we do have a very small smattering of, Western books. It'll be a 90-10 ratio, 90% Indian children's books and perhaps 10% of international titles. But yeah, we would love to see a lot more YA books come out.
Oh, this is so fascinating. I wonder if we could just dwell on that sort of YA and middle grade point, because it's wonderful to talk about picture books and sort of the things that springboard people into being readers at the start and that bond you have. And it's, I guess, a great way to scaffold the role that empathy plays in why we love books and also what they give us, and all of the literature that says we are so enriched individually and in society by this. But sort of looking forward, and I might get back to your point, Vidya, about there being fewer of them and readers and stuff. But if we could just dwell on trends for a moment, Edouard, and then Tereza, perhaps, could you talk to us a bit about, are there particular trends or genres for middle grade and YA? Is there anything special you want to draw out there for us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Vidya, you had such a great point in like number of books in young adult section that are coming from like international market, because it's the very same here. Like suddenly it's like more of the books coming in translation than like having more of the books coming from the Czech authors. So this is a really interesting point. And yeah, we are having a festival soon, and I'm just inviting one of the Czech authors of young adult books. So I'm very happy about this, because I think it's really important and great that kids can actually meet the writers of young adult section. It's really nice. And the same for the chapter books, I would say. I mean, there are trends that are pretty much international, I would say, like books on, I don't know, like mostly books on like groups of children, like going through some adventure, like summer adventure or any kind of other adventure. This is like a long seller, and I believe it always will be in like many forms, because what I see, and it's really interesting as well, like there are more books at the moment for the readers that are at the beginning of their reading journey. meaning like books with like bigger fonts, like shorter chapters, and so on. And I'm such a fan of these books, and I mean, it's so important. So like my shelves are dedicated to books of these. I know they are of interest for children just for a short amount of their time, because and that's what I was talking to my publisher about. My newest book, which is a project, because I wrote a book with my daughter. She's 7, and and it was half. So we really worked on it together, and we were talking to our publisher about it. And I had this idea, and I asked the publisher, would you think it would be a good idea to have like a big font, like just to leave it this way, just capitals? And she said, I don't think so, because in that way you are going to dedicate this book to really only a short time of the reader's journey. So then we decided to keep the regular font, if I can call it this way. So yeah, and I'm like, my shelves are getting bigger on this, and maybe it's also because this topic is very close to me at this moment. And we all booksellers, we know that how important it is to have this journey, the beginning of the journey, the nicest as we can, and we have to provide like a nice start of like reading experience. So this is something I observed recently, maybe. Yeah.
To jump on Vidya's point as well about chapter books, they definitely have seen a subgenre that has absolutely boomed with our young readers in the last couple of years, even though it's existed for many, many years before. It is graphic novels, and famous characters such as Dogman, Captain Underpants, Bunny versus Monkey, lots of them famous characters that come from the Phoenix comic magazine. They release maybe 2 or 3 of them every year, hardback, paperback. Kids are really going bonkers for those. And they might not have the most text, but they definitely do contribute to this love and enjoyment of reading and getting the books, collecting the series of books. I'm not saying it's a necessarily easy transition then to move them onto Asterix and Tintin, which is more of a passion love for me from childhood, but it definitely opens that market for more graphic novels and more reading, and then more chapter books where the text gets a little bit denser, images start to disappear to become fewer amongst pages, but it's a nice in between as well. It definitely does get the children buying books, even if it's the only thing they are interested in that particular time and age. And then sort of moving on to the YA section, the best selling we've had so far this week, coinciding with Pride Month that's just finished in the UK, is The Very Last Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. So that is still technically going under young adult, but I suppose you can be younger than that to read them as well, because we do have younger readers buying those. But they make a very nice transition, and that is definitely one of the genres that is being sold and asked for the most in the young adult section. We've got anything that is representative of LGBTQ plus characters, community. Usually they're going to be adolescents, teenagers in the characters, but they definitely work very well, either British authors or American exports. You've also got a lot of the crime series, I would say. Some of them, quite a few of them got adapted on Netflix, I believe, Amazon and such. I think they get addictive. I am yet to read one, but I think they get addictive, and teenagers definitely seem to be going for them. And one trilogy suddenly becomes a spin-off trilogy, and you end up with 12 books. So that's always quite profitable for us booksellers as well. And obviously, we've also noticed in the last 5 years, maybe, an absolute regain of interest in fantasy. Whereas we used to be, well, sci-fi fantasy, but I think for teenagers, mostly fantasy. We used to be very much sort of Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, and that was sort of it. And then you had the more classic Philip Pullman and Christopher Paolini, but that was nothing really brand new. And I think now it's probably over half the titles we've got in this young adult section is going to be featuring an element of fantasy. Publishers must have noticed there's a really good trick to it, because then it easily transitions into this new genre that is technically adult for our market, romantasy. So anything with more adult characters, but dragons and various quests and very tormented love interests. Well, when the readers become a little older and they want to move on the other side of the shop into the sci-fi fantasy adult section, the transition is really easily done.
Nice. Yeah, so, for us, it's, so we have the bookstores, and we also run a very active program in schools. We work in a lot of schools because that's where we can reach a large number of children. So we run 10, 15 literature festivals across the year in schools across the country. I mean, we're not just based in our city. It's crazy work. Don't ask me what my designation at Funky Rainbow is. I could be unpacker, tea girl, I could be like biller. It just depends on what you need to do when we go to these places. And the trends are sort of different in both the places. In the bookstore, it's still largely 5, 6, 7, 8 children going up to the age of 10 years that sort of come in and are looking for picture books or looking for chapter books, graphic novels. There's just so much of a demand for graphic content in India now that we have to resist putting Dogman in. I mean, I know I could just call the distributor and ask for Dogman and he'd send me whatever 150 Dogman titles if I wanted. That's it. That would fill my graphic novel shelf. Would we need to look for the graphic novels that come out of India, essentially? And there has been a lot of clamoring for graphic novels. So in the stores, and I will agree with what Edouard says, that, fantasy, I know we often go to schools and to get like children to sort of listen to you at one shot. We're like, hello, we're from Funky Rainbow. We're the only children's bookshop in the world that doesn't stock Harry Potter. And their jaws drop and they're like, what do you have then? Like, right, are there other books? And I'm like, come in. Not that I have a problem with Harry Potter. I mean, read them with my nephews, just loved reading them growing up. But we want to introduce them to the Indian books. And there are a couple of writers who've done fantasy series, which have, sort of worked very well. In our school programs, though, it's just middle grade fiction. And increasingly, I just returned from a festival where we sold, I mean, that festival is a bookseller's dream, like, right? We sold 3,500 books. And I'm like, what? I mean, what did we do, really? We just put books up there. There was a lot of request for non-fiction for children, and they're linking it to things that's happening in the world around us, right? I mean, we're going to be celebrating our 79th Independence Day next month in August. So there's a lot of curiosity about people who fought for our freedom. How has India sort of developed in the 79 years since? So middle grade fiction, it just flies off our shelves, really, in the school programs, and this increased demand for non-fiction. We had a writer who did this set of books that had Nat Geo style photographs. There were 15 books in the series about Indian snakes and Indian birds and such lovely titles in Meet Some of India's Stinkiest Animals. Which child can resist, plunging into a book that talks about our stinkiest animals, really, right? So there has been a demand, at least in our school literature festivals, for a lot of nonfiction as well. Why I really want a lot more, especially the number of books that we get asked for, when Edouard was talking about romance. You see, the teachers will go off, but the children are with us at the bookshop in school. And as soon as the teachers are out of bound, they're like, can you please recommend a great romance for me? And I really wish I could pull out, 100 good romances to share. I mean, if you're not going to fall in love as a teenager, when are you going to fall in love, really, right? But we don't have that many, romances that are available. And in the YA category, mental health too. I mean, a lot of requests on books that help children navigate the challenges of growing up, right? I mean, teenage teenage times are difficult, and how do you navigate relationships with your parents, with gender issues and things like that. We would love to see a lot more of those. We do bring in a small smattering of international titles when we feel that, hey, we really do need to put some good books on this theme in there, but largely otherwise try to get books within the Indian context, because contextually too, many things differ. I mean, it's not that easy for a child in a small town in India to come and ask for a book on romance, right? So there are some, I don't say there are any taboos. There are taboos in the heads of the adults who are perhaps managing the children or whatever, the children, and they're all watching the same thing. They're watching Netflix, they're watching Prime, they know, they know of 13 Reasons Why, and they know of all of these, Alice Osman. But yeah, we would love to see a lot more in the YA category.
Well, just on that non-fiction point, while we're here, Edouard, what do you think about non-fiction? Is that something that ever travels across borders, or is that something that is basically UK focused? And what's that looking like in the children's and YA section?
So actually, to start with the business in general, in bookselling, we are down on non-fiction sales in general in the last 3 years, I believe. It's not for lack of publishing, but it's just something that people seem to be either getting from different sources or elsewhere, or that just doesn't sell as much as we would hope it did. That is also the case in children's. What we call reference is most of our non-fiction. It would be for ages 3 to 12 at the most, I believe. The main period, the main time of year when we do sell non-fiction is September to December, mainly because back to school, so all of the school guides, and then all the way through to Christmas, because some of them make for quite nice presents, but that's about it. The one example, a couple of examples I can think of are in the last year or 2 years, non-fiction titles that are derived from adult non-fiction and adapted as a children format with more illustrations, different, but bigger format, more accessible, obviously. So you've got things by David Olusoga, for example, who's doing a lot of history, Black history of Britain. So again, very British, and I think that's traveled across borders for this one. And I could think of another one, the Sapiens collection by Yuval Noam Harari, which has also worked quite nicely for children who obviously wouldn't go and pick up the original tome of a volume. But that's about all the non-fiction that it really seems to be selling that well. I think children's market in Bristol anyway is very much fiction.
Tereza, do you have anything that you want to add on non-fiction?
Oh yeah. I have plenty of things, because just thinking about the setup of my bookshop, I see now that my section of non-fiction books is growing recently, and I'm very, very glad about it. It's not just titles in translation, but also we've got many more publishers and authors, because often the authors are publishing the books by themselves. So it's a self-publishing system. And we've got, for example, this one author, and she's amazing, and she's really devoted into non-publishing themes. So her books are on, like, for example, parents' separation. She makes books for adults and for children as well. It goes like in combination, for example, and she's got other books like about hypersensitivity, for example, and she is very successful in like selling the rights abroad. And it's wonderful to see how successful these books are. And I have one book here I wanted to show you. It's this one. It's called Miko, and this is a book about mushrooms, because in the Czech Republic we've got this wonderful tradition of picking up mushrooms in the forest when the fall comes. And this is a book about mushrooms, but it comes from a different perspective, because it's like a magazine that mushrooms write by themselves. And it's so funny, it's hilarious. The illustrations are so unique. So this is like a bundle of different issues coming together. And this book was awarded at the Bologna Book Fair in 24. I mean, and if you see the list of Bologna's titles, it's amazing that non-fiction title like this, which is really hard to translate when you think about it, won the main prize. So it was really wonderful to learn. So yeah, and there are like many more non-fiction titles coming, and I feel that it's because there are more and more topics and themes that we are opening in children's literature, because we adults feel that this is the time to talk about it finally, and maybe to be able to offer the themes that we were missing as children in the books where we were in the age of our readers. So this is something I really find very, very, growing. Maybe in the contrast with Edouard, but on the other hand, I think that what's important to mention is like I really pick closely the titles in a way that my bookshop is small, and I really need to pick and curate the titles I'm having. So if you come to my bookshop, it won't be just a small, selection for like the bigger bookshops when you enter them and see the other productions. So yeah.
Well, I think we've started touching on my next question already, but I just wondered if you could talk to us, maybe Vidya, we'll start with you, about some of the challenges bookselling is facing in your country, because we talked about the hopes and also some difficulties, but what are those big challenges?
Many challenges for small booksellers typically. Primarily a very fractured distribution system. We have a lot of trouble sourcing and procuring books. Our store is so niche, right? And there is, in India, most bookstores function, under the premise that it's only a front list that works. Now, if I'm focusing only on Indian children's books, it's my backlist that's the strongest. I mean, we do a lot of publishing. There are, 4 or 5 picture books, maybe even more, 10 picture books coming out every month from different publishers. I still couldn't run an independent bookstore if I focused only on the front list of books, right? So the backlist is very important because it's almost like the store is a repository of books that have actually been published in English for children. I mean, we have a small section of books in Indian languages. India is a country of many, many languages. And so we have a small segment that's, that sort of focuses on books from different Indian languages. But so sourcing the books via a distributor, and the bigger publishers, they all work via distributors only. It's a really fractured system here. And imagine I have a literature festival that I'm running in a school. I want 200 copies of a writer's book who's going to be coming, to us. And you are swinging from the gate of the school and calling some guy, or like calling someone somewhere else. You've placed orders, they've just not come in. Distribution is a giant challenge, really. And the other challenge that I would say is to the books that come in from the West have all the money and all the budgets to market themselves to young readers. If there's a new set of Percy Jackson books coming out, kids in schools or kids everywhere already know of these books because the marketing is out there. I'm not sure Indian publishers have the kind of marketing budgets that, these books require. And so for us, literally sometimes, I mean, it's taken 13 years. When we started, the first year we started, everybody was sure we'd shut down in 1 year. 13 years later, we're still here and we haven't shut down. The thing is that people would come to the store and they're like, where's the new Wimpy Kid title? And we're like, well, there's no Wimpy Kid title, but can I show you another nice graphic novel that an Indian writer has sort of created? So publicity. So we're constantly thinking on our feet of ways to promote Indian children's books. We do meet the author sessions. We have an initiative called the Bookish Table, where there's food and books that comes together in some nice ways. I mean, we're just constantly, our gray cells are ticking to find ways to put our own books up front and center, which is a bit of a bummer. You should, I mean, one would think, really, right? I mean, why? I don't say that we should not promote it. I mean, marketing obviously matters wherever you go, but it would be lovely if, let's say, even the big publishers, the big three in India, would invest a little bit more of their time and effort and money and heft into promoting their local lists. So those I would rate as our biggest challenges for a small bookseller like us.
This is so interesting. Thank you all so much for your insights. Edouard, how does that sit for you? What are the big challenges just facing book selling, whether it's across borders or not? But just, yeah, what are you struggling with?
Well, so it comes across as a very first world problem in comparison, but because Waterstones is very centralized, but it's also a large company with, I believe, over now 350 bookshops across Europe.
Wow.
We have a distribution system that really works to our advantage. So that is not one of the challenges, I'm afraid, without bragging. But I think, so this year in the UK is a National Year of Reading decided by the government, which has been, in a way, very good for us booksellers to kick us into action, to talk to other actors of the reading industry, I suppose, for children, so librarians and teachers, parents sometimes as well. And I had a few meetings and a few chats with those people, and most of the time, the main challenge that seems to come about is the fact that some children, or as they get older, stop enjoying reading, and that's becoming our main challenge. There's little we can do about I mean, we can do everything that's possible in terms of offering them as wide a variety of books that will pique their interest as possible. But I think we're also facing the opposition of too many distractions on the side for children to not want to read. Which I mean, it's a challenge and not a challenge, because that's part of our reason for being open as a bookshop. We're here to put books into people's hands and make sure that they enjoy reading and come back. So I guess a lot of it comes down to our service and how good we can be at it. It's very lovely to see very young children getting into books and enjoying books. It's a bit heartbreaking when you hear librarians in primary schools and entry-level years telling us that they have to show and teach children how to turn a page because they tend to be inclined to scroll. That's quite heartbreaking to discover. And then there are initiatives. I mean, that's where we try to put on as many events as possible. Not as many school festivals as you do, Vidya. That would be insane. That would probably kill my back within a month. But it's definitely bringing authors into schools, because the audience is there. So why wouldn't we? It's exhausting but rewarding, and it definitely does put the books into young people's hands and children's hands, because the schools will have bought it or because it will be part of their budget. So regardless of whether they want it or not, they have a book, and then they will be able to take it home and have the memory of meeting the author. So that's a good impact, I believe, I hope to have, and hopefully something that will make them want to read again in future. That said, once they sort of get out of that age where it's a bit maybe less uncool to read or to spend your time in books, a lot of them are getting back to it, which is lovely. And that's where the young adult section is really helping us, and being as wide and varied as possible makes it interesting for a lot of them as well. And hopefully the habit of reading comes back. I mean, I don't know if it's a trend, but we do see a lot of people saying that they would like to find other ways to spend their time than to be on their screens. So, hey, how about something that's been around for a few centuries already?
I think that's going round, but yes, as you say, hopefully people will have a surfeit at some point, and books are so nourishing. It's just like hamburgers are great, but occasionally you just want a salad. So with luck, people will come back to books. And whenever I do events, one of the things I always say is, if you want to be happier, healthier, make more money, have a job you like, be a better contributor to society, and just have a good life, the statistics say if you're a reader, you are so much more likely to sit in all of those categories. It's not a perfect system, but you might as well read because it will be good and you'll probably earn more money. That always makes an impact on people. But Tereza, how about you? What are your big obstacles just as a bookseller?
Yeah, like, I mean, there are many of the same obstacles that were already mentioned, I would say. And I'm always kind of trying to look at the obstacles in a way of opportunity. So when Edouard mentioned like kids like not probably maybe reading so much and being more like digital, and of course this is a big theme. So what I try to do, like I have many book clubs, for example. So I try to reach readers in a way of like discussing about the books, because I mean, one thing is to offer them the books, but the other one is to offer them the space to discuss what they've read, because suddenly the I mean, this is the enjoyment we are actually, or I was looking for always. That's maybe why I opened a bookshop up, because I really wanted to discuss the books with the others. So I have many book clubs for children and for adults as well. And of course, I do creative writing for children, because and it really goes this way: when you read, you write at one point, or the other way around. And it's wonderful to see the stories that are created by young writers. And we do these like readings, evenings, and so on. So I try to really like put the book and the creation in the center of everything. And there is one obstacle I'm looking at for a long time now in the Czech Republic, and it's the fixed price. Actually, the missing fixed price in our system. Because I know in many countries is regular that you've got a book published and the price is given by the publisher, and this is the price that everybody follows, but not in here. In here, the publisher sets the price, and this is the price I am following as an independent bookseller. But even before the book is published, like a month ago, when you see it on the internet, for example, and you see the book cover, you already see that some bigger chains sell the book with like 20% off. And this is something I really can't offer. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to have my bookshop open. And I remember mostly from the beginning, because now I am like, we are operating for 7 years and we've got our customers and it's wonderful. But sometimes it was hard to explain that we are not making the prices, that the price is really given by the publisher, and the price includes everything. Everybody is paid by that price. But, and the fact that some chains can offer the price much lower is not that I don't want to offer them the same, but it's just the system as it is, because often the big chains have the distribution as well, so they are still not losing so much on the book price. So this is the obstacle we are having. We know about it, we discussed it a lot, and I mean, it's really good. I'm very glad, because a few years back we had zero VAT on the books, which is like, for me, I mean, that's amazing, because we used to have 10%, now we have zero, and it's wonderful, it's wonderful. So, I mean, slowly, and I'm really curious about this fixed price system, whether, yeah, there would be opportunity to have something like this in here as well.
That's so interesting, because that's changed a lot in the UK from what it used to be. But just before we move on a bit with a related question, just a little thing for everybody out there. Obviously, this is a Literature Across Borders event, and one of the things we're doing that helps not just books travel, but conversations about them, this lovely event, but we have a program where university students have dialogues about books and they read in thematic pairs, and we now have a parallel schools program. So if anybody out there is interested, we are trying to figure out how to scale the program, and we can't make any promises, but do let us know if you're interested, because we think it's really important that kids can talk to each other across borders about books, and that we're not just talking to each other as adults, but we are thinking about the books are for kids. We should include them too, in a way that's obviously safeguarded and sensible, but gives opportunity for learning. But anyway, I don't want to derail, so I'm going to come back round to the slightly different version of that question, which is, could you, if there's anything that hasn't come up that is an obstacle or an enabler for books travelling across borders, what helps them go and what stops them go? I'm going to come to Edouard first on that, and then if we could come to Vidya, and then Tereza, if we can come to you at the end of that question. Thank you.
I mean, dare I say the Brexit word in terms of borders? The bookselling industry and publishing industry, I believe, was quite worried about 10 years ago when that came up, and we did wonder what was going to happen, because books are created everywhere, published in different countries on paper that comes from different European countries, and then the ink came from yet another country, and somehow all of this had to make its way tax-free to the UK. We have actually not faced any issues in that sense. I have heard of authors, actually I do have a friend who has gone to the Bologna Fair, and I've heard of publishers, publicists, and other authors who have gone to international book fairs. So that doesn't seem to have been an issue in itself in terms of getting literature across borders, literally, and to get interest and sales from international publishers. And yet we don't see a lot of them in the UK, so I'm not quite sure who would be making that decision. I do think there is somewhat more freedom if you're an independent bookseller to be able to curate your shop the way you want to, if you obviously can afford to, and if you've got the working relationships with such or such distributor or directly with the publisher and editors. And that's where international, foreign, independent publishers become a lot more available. And that is something that I'm trying to push as part of a bigger foreign literature propaganda I'm having with my bosses at Waterstones. A lot of it comes down to the ease of access and distribution to make sure that there's a continuity of supply into the bookshops and that demand can be met. So I understand both sides of the argument that we want to make it very wide and accessible, especially in multicultural cities like Bristol is. We've got so many residents, citizens whose native language isn't English, so they would probably, I hope, jump at the thought of being able to get some books in their native language, be it for their families or for themselves. So I think if the demand does become stronger, publishers will be able to help us fulfill that demand, but it's a symbiotic industry and we need to be able to justify it with the sales.
Yeah. For us, I mean, I think the books, don't go across borders that easily. Most of the prices of the books are sort of designed for the Indian subcontinent. I mean, our books are, typically priced at maybe £4 or £5. That itself is quite expensive for an average, child or family. I'm not talking of a city like Bangalore, which has multiple independent bookstores. I mean, there are lovely bookstores at every nook and corner of the city, each one of them thriving because they have some special curation. And Bangalore is this big IT city, so there's parents that really want to invest in having children read. They've got the disposable incomes to do this. But when we travel to our festivals in different parts of the country, the income levels are not this high, right? So there is the need for less expensive books that are under £2 or £3. So now when we have to, move them across borders, like I've told Meghaa 100 times, like, Marquez used to be my favorite writer when I was 20, right? I have never stepped foot in Latin America, right? But I could understand everything that he was writing about in 100 Years of Solitude. I think our books are like that, and they really need to move. And I mean, there are a lot of Indians living everywhere in the world. And I'm not even just talking only of the Indians there, right? I mean, there's the need for diverse books. There's the need for multicultural books. I'm not sure we have a good system. I don't think we've devised a good system, or not even devised. I'd say, I don't think our publishers have even imagined that these books can sort of go westward too. I mean, look at our filmmakers. I mean, they're there everywhere in the world. I mean, if there's a new Bollywood film that gets released here with an actor that everybody knows in the world, I mean, our cricket players are watching Wimbledon, in the royal court, basically, right? So there is a market for all of this up there. I'm not sure we're dreaming it up. I'm not sure and I'm not sure we're imagining prices that would be suitable for the markets where we want to export our books. We have a lot of customers who come to our store. So they're traveling from the US, or they're traveling from the UK, or they're coming in from somewhere in France. And they're like, my God, we never knew these Indian children's books existed. How do you think you can ship these, books to me? Well, I can ship these books to them, but there are no international prices up on them. Even if there are prices, there's problems with shipping, there's problems with duties. And I'm not sure, we've tapped into the fact that books really must transcend borders, frankly. I mean, I'm not saying every book we publish is going to be suitable, to be read in the West, but there are enough books thematically, children that are, wanting to read romance here, are also wanting to read romance in another part of the world, or so I'm not sure we have envisioned a system, and which is why we're very, very, very happy about initiatives like Literature Across Borders. I'm just delighted to know that there are books that Meghaa and you have chosen that are being read in colleges and perhaps in schools and by students, because we want to know, we want to know how is there a child somewhere there that's picked up a book set in a small town in India and reading it the way I read Marquez, imagining what the Latin American world, must be like, really, right?
Tereza, how about you? Obstacles and enablers.
Yeah, I'm just so much in, in conclusion with Vidya, like what you just said, it's so important. Like stories are finding us, right? And me and Vidya, we had this lovely meeting at Frankfurt Book Fair many years ago. And like now, me calling you from the Czech Republic, I can show you this book I got from Vidya. So I mean, this is how books travel, right? And you can, I think, like, because there are many ways how books can travel, because you as a bookseller, you can obviously order the books from all around the world nowadays, and you can wait for the package to come. It's sometimes sometimes you will wait and it comes with like some extra money needed to be paid because you didn't know that there are customs at some point and so on. But I mean, this is, of course, this is one idea, like to order the books from abroad and to have them in your bookshop. And like there shouldn't be an obstacle, the language, different language as well, because if you think about the wordless books, and it's like a big thing at the moment. I mean, there are so many wordless books in the world, and I've got a shelf of wordless books already in my bookshop. And I think it's so amazing because when people are coming to my bookshop and they don't speak Czech, so sometimes they are kind of sad, right? Like, yeah, I wish I could buy a book, but I don't speak the language. I'm like, yeah, I understand, but look, I've got this shelf of wordless books. So if there's anything that you like, I mean, this is international language, so you can easily pick from this shelf. And then there are books that are translated from like different languages to different languages of the world. And I was really thinking about it so much, like how this love like falling in love with some book comes, right? Because if you look at the publishing plans of the publishers each year, twice, right? I love this moment when the new plans come and they just reveal them, right? So you know what to look forward to. And I see because I know some of the publishers, so I already know what they like and what they are just looking and searching for. So it's so nice to see like how one book from across the world can come to the Czech market just because somebody in the publishing house, some editor, for example, fell for the story. So I mean, this is something very, very important to remember. And this is what happens at the fairs, because there are so many people at the book fairs internationally, right? And the editors and people from publishing houses like visiting the other publishers, and this is where the magic happens, I think.
Amazing. We have a lovely question from Tarini. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and apologies if I'm not. I'm not very good at phonological processing. But anyway, we have a lovely question, which is, how about graphic and picture books for children on themes related to environmental issues? Which is a great question, because that's where Literature Across Borders started. We looked for a couple of years only at environmental green animal books for a while, and now we tend to include at least one pairing a year. So Tereza, should we come back to you and then come to Edouard and then come to Vidya on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very great question, I think. And like knowing that you started with like books on nonfiction and so there will be a few books popping up my mind. I can now think of the book that was published by one of the Czech organization that is actually it's interested in environment, and it's a wonderful book. It's called, in translation, Amanda and the World, and it's about the main character is a girl and she's coming like through different situations. And so if you want, you can look it up, because it's a book in translation and I think you would really love it. It's a wonderful one. And I mean, there are different books on environment, of course. Many of them are in translation, but many of them are also in, coming from the Czech authors. I don't know what, and graphic novels was the question too, right? I'm thinking about the graphic novels at the moment on this theme. Well, maybe if somebody else want to continue, I'll think of more to share.
Same. I've been trying to scramble my brains to try to think what book could I think of to talk about. I think it definitely is a topic that is being seen a lot more in picture books, sort of climate consciousness and how to save the world, to make it a bigger topic. The first that comes to mind is not a graphic novel nor a picture book, I'm afraid, but it's the book series by Hannah Gord, which have been beautifully illustrated by Levi Pinfold. Finding Bear, The Lost Bear. She finds a sort of animal on the edge of extinction, and a child protagonist is rescuing them. And it's very packed with information on how to protect the environment and those animals and the fauna and flora, but it is such an accessible story and accessible message that it sort of really sits naturally into the child's reading, and they get very engaged with it. I think that's potentially going against what I said earlier about the nonfiction for children. That's potentially where we would sell more nonfiction titles when it comes to reference books, the likes of Where Does Plastic Come From and How to Live Without Plastic, How to Live a Greener Life, How to Clean the Planet. That definitely is something that we have seen an increase of. When I was lucky enough to curate a selection of kids' books for a kids' festival, that's definitely something that the parents were the most interested in. Perhaps more the parents than the children, but then they got them into this topic in any case.
Yeah, so green's really big in India. I mean, Meghaa, who's on screen, has a lovely book of nonfiction that we take often to our schools and sells off our store as well. It's called Unearths which is the environmental history of India, tracing it back from the time of independence, the post-independent history, from the time that we won our independence, different things that we've done, food practices we've adopted, farming practices. So we used to be part of a festival that focused entirely on green literature. And we've got books in every category, literally picture books. I don't have them up here readily with me, but because you said Hannah Gold and Lexi had a question on some books that have crossed in and come into, into our shelves, I know we had picked Hannah Gold as well. We have one, initiative that we love talking about is that the citizens of a particular neighborhood in Bangalore got together and decided to save a lake in their area. The lake was getting dry and they wanted to sort of restore it. And they felt, once they did that and built this really nice walking path and cycling track, and, they felt they needed to set up a lake festival. So every year they would set up this lake festival, Save the Lake Festival, literally. And amongst a lot of environmental things that they did there, right, taking children on nature walks and, spotting insects and creepy crawlies along the way and stuff like that, they actually decided to invite us to do a pop-up, at the Save the Lake Festival. And we started to curate, and I found we could take 400, 500,000 books if we wanted to, if we included even, books on animals. And it was such a fun initiative. It would begin at 6 a.m. and we had this book truck. We put all our books into the truck and take it there. And even before we unload all our books from there to put up on the tables that have been set up, kids are like picking books, and I'm telling my colleagues, let them come up and bill with us later. It is a great way to draw attention to a neighborhood problem that had been resolved and connect it to books. I mean, I think there's just lots of initiatives like that run in India, that promote green literature. In fact, even our curriculum, the national curriculum says that a certain number of green books are mandated in every library, which is really nice, right? So we find a lot of publishers bringing out green literature every month, literally every month. And World Environment Day, we've got tons of them. We really have beautiful stories. The one that I remember really well is about this little girl whose grandfather is dying and wants to see rain. There's been no rain in the city that they live in for a very long time. And she wants to make sure that her grandfather because he's always talking about playing in the rain, as a child, and he wants to kind of experience it one last time. And what she does to make that possible, it's a bit of a fantasy, of course, really. And lovely books like I said, in the category of fiction and non-fiction, and for readers of all ages.
Amazing. Before we move on to anything else that anybody wants to ask, or I've got so many questions I could ask, we could be here absolutely all week, but I won't keep you. Is there anything, lovely panelists, that you are burning to ask each other? Maybe there isn't, maybe there is. We've covered so much, but if there's anything you would like to put on the table as a question, do shout out. But it's fine if you don't have something. I have so many questions.
Well, I think Tereza and me, we are, from the same little corner of the world kind of thing. 350 bookstores. Wow. I don't even know what that means really, right, in terms of the Waterstones. So when you were talking about who's curating, who's doing the curation across the board, right? I mean, what do independent stores like your store in Bristol, do you have a choice to put like some special books in because you think customers in Bristol will be looking for books like that, or is it like a global decision?
Yes. So again, I'm very lucky to work in one of the largest bookshops we have in the estate. It's extremely large in Bristol. It's I couldn't even give you a square meter average, but it's quite large. So that means that we do have a lot of room on the shelves to put a lot of books. The way the Waterstones structure works is that in head office, there is a small team of buyers. So they will be the ones directly communicating with publishers and getting the information on books about to come out. Main publications, usually about 6 months to a year in advance. And then they sort of buy in bulk, usually somewhere in the hundreds and thousands, depending on what the title is. And then all of that stock ends up in what we call the hub, which is a giant double, triple warehouse, I believe, in the center of the country, which allows us to order as booksellers from the shops directly into the hub. And usually the delivery timing is 24 to 48 hours for that.
Wow.
So that makes it extremely convenient. Should that not be the case, we obviously have relationships with distributors, mostly gardeners in the UK, to get stock pretty directly, but those are the cheapest and easiest ways for us to get stock. And when it comes to the shop themselves, usually they work in clusters of shops in the same area, same cities. We've got an ordering person, a commercial person, usually they're called, who has a data set of all the books that are being sold on the day. And then we decide whether we want to reorder them to replenish or not. They have an awareness of what new titles are coming up and how well they are likely to sell in each shop. So in Bristol, for example, we've got the main city centre bookshop that I work in. We've also got a much smaller one, which is in a listed building in an area called Clifton Village. It might as well be a local independent bookshop. We've only got locals coming in. It is a lot quieter, but it's got potentially more tourists, very much people who live up and down the street, come in several times a week, sometimes several times a day. So you get to know the faces pretty well. You have to put a lot more thought into curating this bookshop because obviously the space is very limited on the shelves, but they also educate you on how you can make those decisions. When it comes to the book market, I think we're mostly going for the obvious bestsellers, the sort of UK chart top 100 bestsellers in this one, because they tend to be the ones that are mostly going to be asked. When you get into the adult literature and mostly history, that's where it gets a little bit more curated and complicated because some customers have got specific demands. So yeah, that's pretty much based on a commercial person who's got this awareness, and that comes with experience and some training and talent. And then there's ongoing communication with the booksellers themselves and the bookshop managers to curate the shop. And that's why we're lucky to have such a strong identity as a city. We know, or we hope we know, what's going to work well with our readers and customers, what books are very relevant to Bristol or relevant to topics that are talking to the city. So we can easily have this discussion with the commercial person and order up, ask for more quantities. That's usually where my job as an events manager comes in, because I sort of curate whatever the festival is going to be about and what stock I want to get. So it's an ongoing discussion, bearing in mind that the availability of the title is usually easier and swifter thanks to the hub.
Nice.
Amazing. I'm just looking at time, but Laura Elizabeth has asked, are you seeing YA books like eco-fantasy and eco-horror? Show of hands from our panel. Are you seeing these, or are these not really a thing for you?
Yeah, we are seeing some eco fantasy and some eco world without water, a world where resources are so scarce in the present planet that people are finding another planet to make a home in. Science fiction that explores not a lot of them, but certainly observing some trends in eco horror. I'm not sure, but the state of the planet is anyway somewhat of a horror story in any case, really, right? But we are seeing some eco books in the YA category.
I would say not in the young adult section, not that I know of anyway. I don't know every book by heart, but I don't think I've seen that marketed as such specifically. I have seen some eco-fantasy, which probably borders on horror as well, in the adult section. Please don't ask me the title because I have forgotten. I could remember the cover, but not the title. So there are a few titles, but they are more marketed to the adult market.
Tereza, do you have anything that is worth mentioning, or it's fine if it's not? Eco fantasy, eco horror, is that a YA thing in Czechia?
Yeah, definitely it is. But as for my bookshop, I've got just a few titles, I would say, because I'm looking for good translations and so on. And it's sometimes hard to find. So I know the publishers that really put energy into like having wonderful translations that really, that are observed, and where the publisher, where the translators are written on the front cover and so on. So I'm looking for these books. But yeah, I recently think of one sci-fi from this branch, and it's called a sci-fi for people who don't really read sci-fi, which is like very attractive when I offer it to the customers, because sometimes it's hard to offer sci-fi to somebody who doesn't really read sci-fi yet. And back to your first question about eco-critical books, I have one, and it's more like nonfiction, a big format. It's called Me, the Octopus. And it's a wonderful one. And I mean, the story is shifted a little bit because it's a story of octopus who lives down in the ocean and is surrounded by all the things that people just throw away. So microplastics and everything. And the octopus thinks, wow, it's so amazing. Who are these people, right? Because they have so many things, so many stuff, and they just throw it away. So I would really love to get to know people. So it's more about like the octopus going to meet people and talk to them. So it's really a nice one. I love when the stories shift, the kind of the story that goes the other way around that we would be expecting, like not observing the ocean and like what's in there, but like having the perspective of the octopus actually and actively visiting people and just talking to them, right? Mm-hmm.
That sounds terrific. I will have to circle around with some book recommendations if we can't fit it in now. It's probably easier actually to do it afterwards, and I'll pop it in the video link because then people have the spelling. So let me do that with everyone afterwards. But there's a question that I would love to know a bit about from you guys, because as an author, I so rarely get any contact with readers elsewhere, much more in the adult sphere with my crime books. But with my YA fiction, I really very rarely hear from people who are not based in the UK. And I'd love to know, do you do international events with authors? Do publishers ever facilitate that? What do you think could help with that element of books crossing borders? Tereza's nodding, so Tereza, will come to you first, and then if we come to Edouard, and then we come to Vidya.
Yeah, I have to say, unluckily, not so often, but I think it's because it's harder to invite an author from abroad, because I would love to, cover the expenses and everything, but it's not possible often. So what happens is when a publisher decides to publish the book from the foreign author, sometimes they are thinking about just inviting the author to the Czech Republic, for example, and then they plan kind of a tour. So this can be something that can, I think, help to the bookshops and booksellers if we have this connection with the publishing house, and they know that we would love to host the author when there is a possibility. I have a lovely guest from Taiwan, for example, and it was all due to the publisher who publishes books from like all the picture books from Taiwan, wonderful ones. But this was like it was such a lovely event, right? And it was in cooperation with the university in my city. And it also, this is something that helps a lot to have kind of a cooperation with a bigger institution like university, museum of art, and so on. So I mean, because we cooperate on local base, it's it's good to know people, good to get to know people, and like places.
I think the answer is a bit similar. I sometimes do, not as often as I'd like necessarily, even though it's obviously easier with American or Canadian or even Australian English-speaking authors, so that there's no element of translation necessarily involved into it. So in this case, yes, I have hosted as part of international tours that were already booked in by the publisher. So that makes it really easy for me because I can just say, yes, I'm interested, please bring them in. I've had to push back on some other publishers saying, would you be able to pay for this author to get the plane from Tel Aviv into the UK? I'm afraid not, that is not in my budget. But I have also worked quite a fair bit with the French Institute in London. So obviously that was for French authors, but they were being published and translated into the UK. And for that, more independent publishers like Fitzcarraldo and Other Stories are very good at getting the authors to sort of tour and visit the countries they're translated into. And because they were coming on the occasion of a literature festival in London with the Institute, and I had this relationship with the organizer already, we agreed to bring them to Bristol for an event as well, which wouldn't necessarily mean the biggest audience or the most attended, because the books don't get all of the marketing and promotion that they would get had they been English speakers. But we do have a big enough community of French speakers or Francophile curious in Bristol to have attended and to have really enjoyed meeting those authors. So it does happen. It really depends on whether the book is translated, and it really depends on the occasion, whether it's part of a bigger tour or whether it's a one-off event, in which case we're probably going to have to discuss budgeting.
Yeah, budgeting is the big thing, really. We get, I mean, if arts councils support the travel of writers that are in other parts of the country, I mean, we've had a couple of publishers who've published maybe Indian writers living in other parts of the country, I mean, other parts of the world. And when an arts council supports their travel to India, then they'll reach out to us and say, would you like to do an event with, so-and-so? But that sometimes there are writers who, like we have a writer who lives in the UK, Nainika Mehtani, who's an alumnus of a very, very big management school in Bangalore. So she came down for the 25th anniversary of the, institute, and did a whole bunch of sessions with us. But the budgets to, make international travel possible, they are almost impossible for a little bookstore like us to afford, really. Although I have to talk about this initiative that we came up with during COVID, we were just locked down. I mean, we were a traveling bookshop at that stage. I mean, we were a mobile bookstore going to different parks and public spaces and schools and popularizing Indian children's books. We didn't have a store, a physical store during COVID. And the wheels of the truck were just locked down. Schools were scrambling to get their own, curriculum online and, to do things. And then we sort of started hosting a show very early because, one of the co-founders of Funky Rainbow is quite tech savvy. And I thought the one skill that we really have is to recommend books. And we started to host this show every weekend. I mean, it was crazy. We didn't even know what we'd signed up for when we started to host it, because I thought we would do it once a month. I was hosting it, and my co-founders were sort of promoting it on social media and doing various things. Essentially, it just went viral. We ran it for 2 years, literally every Saturday with some short breaks in between. And we hosted awards, we hosted ceremonies, I mean, like tributes to some writers whom we lost during COVID. We invited writers who were living abroad, Indian writers who've written books, because the internet just makes so many things possible. And then just out of the blue, we're like this bookstore in one corner of Bangalore. The Bologna Book Fair picked it as one of the 6 most exciting pandemic initiatives by independent booksellers across the world. I'm like, wow, man, the great power of the internet. So online collaborations, are something that we're definitely interested in. I mean, so they were very, very happy to take a conversation forward, to have an interesting writer come up. We have this whole tech setup, like the show was live streaming on Instagram and on Facebook and on our YouTube channel. And in fact, the platform that we use to live stream reached out to us once. They're based somewhere in California, and they were like, hey, you guys have made such good use of our platform. Can you come and talk, about how well you use the platform? And I'm like, wow, I'm like an internet. I mean, I'm not a tech person at all. The thing that I can do is to talk about books, really. But these initiatives, I think, would really bring books closer, people, and maybe open up markets to, for these books to travel, introduce. I mean, people in different countries are interested in hearing, people from other countries talk, right? So I think the online medium can be used fairly well, and we should explore some collaborations. I mean, I say this always, a journey of 1,000 miles, Confucius says, right? Journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. I'm like, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first book. Okay, so that's what it is.
Brilliant. Well, I think we are going to have to close shortly, but just an open offer. If you want to do online events and do some collaboration to help books and conversations about them travel across borders, come and talk to me and Meghaa, and we will see if we can help or facilitate or publicize or something like that. We are always happy to chat. And Meghaa had a wonderful recommendation for authors, little tip. If you are traveling authors out there and you would like to do some international events, why don't you just reach out to some booksellers in advance, see if they might be interested. The worst they can say is no or nothing at all, but who knows? So that's a really, really great idea. But on that note, I think we are out of time, unfortunately, so we will have to stop there. But thank you all so much for your insight and wonderful ideas and all your experience and expertise. Thank you for sharing this with so many people around the world. It's been an absolute pleasure and absolutely fascinating. And yeah, I can't thank you enough. Meghaa, did you want to say any words just to finish off before we stop the video? But thank you all for everyone who's joined us as well.
No, I think it was a fascinating conversation. And what always excites me about these exchanges is how much, we think that somebody sitting in another part of the world would have a very different, experience. But what's really been wonderful in the course of having these joint conversations through literature across borders is like, we are different, but we're also very similar in many ways. And some of the things that we struggle with and some of the things that we want to improve are things that are common, no matter where you are in the world. And there's always the possibility of tapping into each other's experiences to sort of solve the problems that we have in our little corners of the world. And it's so unfortunate that we don't often get this opportunity to think together about the art and craft of making and selling books to young people. So I'm very glad that we were able to host Edouard and Tereza and Vidya in this wonderful conversation with you, Lexi. It was most enlightening, and thank you so much.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much. I think I will close the video, but I won't go anywhere immediately. But thank you all to everyone who's joined us, and thank you to our amazing speakers. That was absolutely wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.